everyone, and welcome to another episode of Me Driving to Work. I am your host slash chauffeur, Darkness 30XX. You can follow along on YouTube and Facebook at The Black Hood Crew, and then you can follow along at my name there on YouTube and Facebook, on Twitch, Twitter, Steam, Trovo. And you can follow along on all my other shenanigans on TikTok and Instagram. So, on our way to work today, seems to be a fairly nice but extremely hot day. Like yesterday, very humid. Right now it's just hot. Yesterday it got humid after rain. That's the moisture content of the air. Very humid yesterday. Even late into the evening, we would step outside and it just felt sticky. And that's not cool. By any measure, not cool to be sticky when it's just hot. And right now it's just hot and dry. Like a desert type air, you know what I mean? And it's just not cool. Right now my temperature gauge in the truck started out at 109. It's down to 105. I'm pretty sure it'll drop under 100 by the time I get to work, simply because that's the temperature of the truck. As you're driving, air is being pushed through the engine, that temperature is going to drop, which just dropped another degree. But it still doesn't change the fact that it's hot as hell right now. And this is normal. So for those of you that have never experienced this before, this is normal for South Florida. And for those of you that have moved down here or are thinking of it, this is normal. This is an everyday, normal occurrence here in South Florida. Those of us that have lived our entire lives here have become acclimated to it. Our bodies are used to it. So it doesn't really bother us. We can still acknowledge the fact that it's hot, that it's very hot. But it doesn't change the fact that we are known for this. We have known this for many years. Some of us our entire lives, such as myself. I've only ever lived in South Florida my entire life, except for a short stint out in California, but that was a very long time ago. And again, I have only ever really known South Florida weather, the rain, the heat, the climate of this area. That's all I've ever really known. All I can ever really remember. The heat, the humidity, the rain. Oh, weird. Anyway, this is normal. Current temperature outside is sitting at almost 100 degrees. This is normal. And not for nothing, I hope this drives plenty of people away. I hope they all leave and never come back. Maybe then, those of us that have actually lived here will be able to continue to afford to live here. Because right now we can't. We just can't. The cost of living has increased across the country. The number one offender, the number one location where it is the most expensive to live. It is not New York, it is not California, it is in Florida, and specifically right here in South Florida. And by South Florida, I don't just mean stuff, say Orlando down. the lower half of Florida. That's not what I'm talking about. When I say South Florida, I mean the real South Florida. This is barely Palm Beach County, acknowledging Broward, but specifically Miami-Dade County. We are the driving force for South Florida. The iconic South Florida is Miami-Dade County and all of the sub-cities found within. Not just Miami, but you have North Miami, Kendall, Hialeah, Homestead. That's South Florida. No one says they are from South Florida but live in Palm Beach. They say they live in Palm Beach. People in Broward occasionally will say, yeah, I live in South Florida. And then they'll tell you, well, I live in Fort Lauderdale. And you can go, okay, but does it really count? Geographically speaking, maybe. But right here, not happening, homie. South Florida is pretty much entirely Miami-Dade County. Which, again, 20 plus years ago, over 20 years ago, we're talking about 25, 30 years ago, it was known as just Dade County, and Miami was just the city found within. But that city incorporated so many other smaller suburbs, smaller cities, these are your Hialeahs, North Miami, stuff like that, that they just became one. So even though you still have the designation between, say, Homestead and Kendall, if you were to say that's Miami, you would not be wrong. The entirety of the county is the city, Miami-Dade County. That's why they added the name on there. And not only that, but added it first, because it could have been Dade, Miami. But they didn't do that. Reason being, the city has grown since I was a kid and literally engulfed what was once Dade County and made it its own. The name is still there, but the identity, long gone. Dade County doesn't exist. It is now Miami-Dade County. And you'll still find people who knew it as Dade County, myself, people older than me, like my parents still remember it being Dade County. But there are multiple generations of people living right now that have only ever known Miami-Dade County by that name. I remember when there was a time where the area code 786 didn't exist. It was 305 for Dade County, 954 for Broward. And that was it. There was no 863. There was no 786, 754. It didn't exist. They didn't exist. Because back then, there wasn't that large of a population where people needed, or the population needed, an additional area code for their phone numbers. I remember there was a time where you didn't even have to dial the area code before dialing the number. You could just dial the 7-digit number and it would connect. You didn't have to designate 305, 954, 786, 863, 754. You didn't have to designate them. 863 isn't a South Florida area code, is it? 754 and 786 I know for sure. But You didn't have to at one point dial the area code before the number. That wasn't a thing back then. Now it is, because so many people now live in South Florida, and of course need a way to communicate. So they get issued a phone number. But at a certain point, they ran out of phone numbers. 305 ran out of phone numbers. 954 ran out of phone numbers in order to provide people both home and mobile service. So that's what it is. They needed new area codes. And that's where you now have 786 and 754. You now have new area codes and a whole smattering of new phone numbers to provide the people that are now currently living in South Florida, who made the decision to move down here and live here. I was perfectly fine with my phone number, which I will not be saying here, but I can tell you it is a 954 number. When I first got it, I was living in Broward County, just barely, but living in Broward County. So I had a 954 number. In fact, I still do. The phone number I have is the exact same phone number. Let's go, folks. The light's green. The phone number I have now is the exact same phone number that I've always had. I have not had another phone number. It is a 954 number, but I've never had any other phone number by any means. And even when I switched carriers, like I remember when I first started out, I first got it under Singular, which at the time was its own independent cell phone company. Had an orange logo, kind of looked like the Nickelodeon Splat, kind of like that. Then AT&T bought them out, and my service went from Singular to AT&T. But my number did not change. Then I made the switch to T-Mobile. And again, carried my phone number over. Why? Because I like my phone number. It is a phone number that is associated with me. So then, when was this? Last year, I believe it was, or maybe even the year before, I switched once more to a different cell phone company. In this particular case, it is Xfinity Mobile. I made the switch because I needed a cheaper line that still offered me everything that I needed, which was basically the unlimited talk, text, data, but wasn't going to charge me $70 a month like T-Mobile was. Instead, I pay $46 and change every month, without fail, for the unlimited talk, text, and data, which is your internet data. And that is how I'm able to connect with you. Also, the fact that they had a pretty good deal on the last Note from Samsung, the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, which is this phone right here that I'm using. And I've been with them ever since. Haven't had any problems. Money-wise, I've saved a ton of money that could then go to other things. But again, I ported my number over. Well, in between T-Mobile and Xfinity, I had what's this prepaid one? Reload. Oh, I forgot. It's it's one of these prepaid ones that kind of started out, and I was with them for a while. Then the service started to get bad. Not the actual customer service, but the actual cell phone service started to, started to have some serious issues. And that's when I jumped ship on Xfinity Mobile. I was already a Comcast customer, Xfinity customer, because that's who supplies my home with internet data. And because of that, I qualified. So I jumped ship, haven't looked back. But again, each time I switched, I ported my number over. And that's basically when the new cell phone company gets my number released from the cell phone and then immediately acquire it with their service under their SIM plan, which is what I did. So each time I switched, I kept my number. You might be asking yourself, why don't most people do that? And that's a good question. And the truth is, I don't know. I don't know why people wouldn't just keep the same number. My guess, in most cases, is they're trying to avoid contacting or being contacted by someone, whether it's family that they've cut off, friends that they've cut off or been cut off from, or things like debt collectors, the IRS even, and something along those lines. At least I'm guessing. Thankfully, I've never had that issue before, so my number has stayed the same. And again, never had any problems. Not now, not ever. Oh, God. Really? Gotta go quicker than that, man. Anyway, yeah. And it's always been a 954 number. I've never had 786, 305, 754. I've never had a number under any other different area code. So it's always been nice having the same number because I've only have to memorize one, my own. And I do. I have it perfectly memorized right up here. So in the event I ever need to provide my phone number to someone else, I don't have to pull this game of, wait, let me check because I just changed my number, which, given my line of work, happens more often than you think. So instead, I can just blurt out my phone number and know full well that it's always going to be there. It's always going to be the same number, which is good. Very good thing. Very good thing to have is the same phone number. So yeah. If you're down here, and this is going to be your first or even second summer here in South Florida, just know it's always like this. Always like this. So, do all of us native South Floridians a favor and leave. Take your baggage with you. Take your ideas. Take your everything and leave. And never return. Never ever return. Because just like how it is now, it will be like this if you ever think about coming back. Maybe even worse. Don't do it. Stay. Wherever it is you are, stay. Because all you're doing is making it more difficult for people like myself who have lived in South Florida their entire lives and don't want to leave. Because again, this is all I've ever known. But it feels like I'm being squeezed out of what's literally been my home for the past 37 years. Come on. What idiot. That's why your car's junker. Anyway. I feel like I'm being squeezed out of my home. And I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. This has happened before to different groups of people. Most famously, the Native Americans edged out of the land that they've known as home for many generations, only now to be forced onto reservations, basically corralled. How's it going? Coming from YouTube. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. So just a FYI, this drive is me actually going to work, which it will be cutting out in a few moments here as I find a parking space. I am discussing anything and everything. Whatever the idea, whatever the topic. At the moment, I was basically giving a kind of sort of history lesson as to what South Florida once was, oh so many years ago, which is where I live. Let me park without hitting anybody. Let me straighten out a bit here. So I don't want to block anybody. There we go. It is complicated to say the least. Motivations and things like that between Russia and basically the defending country, in this case Ukraine. There's too much smoke, too much propaganda on either side to definitively say who's in the right, who's in the wrong. Because I've heard both sides. You know, it is a travesty more than anything else that you have, this conflict going on, essentially on the other side of the globe from here, and yet so many people are still involved. To a degree, of course. I mean, it's not like we have boots on the ground or any neighboring countries have, sanctioned boots on the ground. It's not like we sent soldiers over there. If there are volunteers, that's a different story, which the president of Ukraine is more than willing to accept anybody that comes by. But again, I mean, of all the times for this to happen, it's everything's just hitting the fan at the same time. Armed conflict, a world away, the price of literally everything is skyrocketing. Yeah. And even though we're not directly involved, we are affected by it. So at this point, does it really matter who started it? Who has laid claim to who knows where? Because at the end of the day, all this did is create a ripple effect, problems extending outward. Yes, these two countries have their own internal issues that they have to deal with. You know, they all have their own problems that they have to deal with, whether it be, you know, their own countries, inflation, recessions that they might be dealing with, political issues, corruption on either side. But then you have all the stuff that's now affecting everyone else. So the only thing we can do is hope it ends one way or the other. Because at the end of the day, it's no one really has the right of way, you know? And again, I've heard it from both sides, so it's not like I'm cherry picking here. Things have been going downhill for a long time. It wasn't just a 2020 type issue. This is something that's been going on for almost a decade, I would say more so. Just a systematic decline in everything. You have so many countries around the world dealing with their own internalized issues that if they were to get any bigger than they were, they would be on par with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. You then have the systematic issues we have in our own country, which we've been dealing with for decades. Like this country, you know, this is a phrase that I say many times to people, that the United States has been good sometimes. They've been better in rare occasions, but this country has never been great. And it's sad because the potential is there. We have the people, we have the intelligence, we have the infrastructure, we have the ability to be a great country. But instead, you have people like the elites, world governments, who are only looking out for number one. They're only looking out for themselves. And they don't care who gets burned in that process. And the ones always getting burned are people like you and me, the people at the bottom of the totem pole, those of us that, you know, eke out an existence day to day. But what can we do, right? It's part of what it means to be at the bottom. So I would definitely want to continue this again another time. By all means, yes. Same. So it doesn't matter where it is. Canada, United States, Mexico, any other country in the world, like the gap between the top and the bottom only gets wider with time. It doesn't decrease, only increases with time. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and cut this out here because I do have to go into work. I only got a few minutes to get to my clocking station. But we can definitely continue this. You can go ahead and follow along. I will be going live again tomorrow night, 9 p.m. my time. That's Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. From home. And I will be playing a game, but I will be watching my chat as well. So you can definitely chime in there as well. And we can definitely keep this going. You can leave comments on this video below. We'll continue it there. But until tomorrow night, I've been host/streamer Darkness30XX of the Black Hood Crew. That's BHC_Darkness30XX. You can follow along on all socials, and I'll be there. So until then, you have a good day, you have a good night, and be excellent to everyone and all around. Take it easy.